Good morning. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say that it's a quick one, but I'm hoping it is, because you'll probably hear it in my voice. I've got a bit of a flu/cold. Who knows the difference? Whatever. I've had the aches and pains. Who cares? It's not COVID. But we'll see how my voice goes. But I just wanted, because I think it's easy. Sometimes it's just easier to quickly talk about it on Zoom and not on Zoom. That's the problem. To quickly just do a quick stream and talk about a few things, but also just to catch up, right? I'm a bit flat. I apologise. So I thought that people have been asking me a bit about the Zoom stuff. I'll just give people a few seconds to get in here. But people have been asking about the Zoom terms of service thing, because, terms of service are really boring. Like, I just want to say that even if you are someone who loves tech law, and even if you are someone who is interested in the landscape, and even if you are this stuff's boring. It's really dry, right? And so but also, I mean, at the end of the day, none of this is advice, and none of this is even a consult. If you want a consult, you got to pay me for shit. But people can ask me generally what I think, and this counts as general advice, but I'm not qualified to do it. I'm not a GDPR specialist. I am not anything. Okay. At the moment, other than a tech person who has thoughts about various things, and I know where the industry's going, and I can maybe help distill some of it. But if you obviously anything that's unique to your business and your relationship with your clients, that's something that needs an individual relationship. I think, but a lot of people make it very, I think people's expectations are, but even any kind of advice, marketing advice, anything, okay? Any kind of advice, that's a distraction. I'll deal with it in a minute. I'll talk to you in a minute. So any kind of advice that you get, whether it's marketing or whether it's about GDPR particularly, or about, legal stuff especially, right? It's because that's actually regulated, okay? Health advice, anything. It can only be general in nature. Like your specific stuff, it's like, well, whether you use Zoom or not, it's up to you, right? Or whether you sign these things is up to you. You do you. But as when you can, but you got to pay for good advice, regardless whether it's marketing or not. Like a big part of the reason why tech went the way that it did was because people just took what should have been general advice and applied it to their business like it was a rule of thumb. And then all of a sudden you find yourself building cults like an idiot and having no sense of responsibility for this, right? Some of these tactics, and especially things around building fans and fandoms and all that sort of stuff, these things that are taken as given, there's no rules of thumb when it comes to actually running a business. And so if you're running a business and relying on YouTube tutorials or someone who's giving general advice for your business, then, you're opening yourself up later on for, first of all, every business is different, okay? And if you don't know that, then maybe you shouldn't be in okay, here we go. I think fewer people should be in business. A lot fewer, okay? Because it takes a specific type of thinking and muscle and level of self-awareness and lots of things that, hustle bros, they think it's just about making money. But this short-term profit-seeking, rent-seeking, bollocks is how we ended up. This idea that you can just come. You see this with AI at the moment. You'll just see this coming in where it's like, just use this tool, exploit these things with no thought for anything other than what's in it for me, okay? I don't think those people should be in business, and I think it should be regulated, right? And it is regulated because it's like, obviously businesses are regulated, but I'm just saying, you fuck around and find out with this stuff, and it applies to AI, it applies to Zoom, it applies to marketing, it applies to, like I said, your GDPR. That is, like, anyone who thinks that the GDPR compliance is just a matter of putting on a pop-up, it's like, well, no, it's not that simple. If you want to be truly compliant, you need to make sure that your whole process is designed around it. It's like, well, I can't give advice for free. This stuff takes a long time to look into. First of all, not a lawyer. Second of all, just a tech person who's studying law. They're different things. I can tell you roughly strategically where the industry is going and why it's encouraging, but don't take anything I say as advice. And if you do, then fucking pay me. Jesus Christ. Things aren't free. So anyway, people need to be willing to pay for expert advice more on things. And that's my general rant in general about anything to do with these things, especially when it is an emerging area that there's still legal questions that need to be answered. Okay. And yeah, it's just like, well, okay, I can point you generally in the direction, but I mean, this is the general, actually, it is, everything I do is interconnected. Hi, Craig. I can see you. I'll put it back on now. I was just trying to open. Thanks, Matt. Hi, Matt. Poor Matt. The puppy dog gets the fucking newspaper. Poor guy. But just generally, this race, this devaluing of expertise, and I think. It was funny because I was actually I had a dilemma about what I was going to stream about, because I've had a few things sort of simmering up over just a general frustration with people who are arguing about politics online, accomplishing nothing, this Dunning-Kruger bullshit, this rise of political commentators, this rise of people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but they're elevated they're elevated because somehow in our minds we have been trained to see likes and retweets and those metrics as this person knows what they're talking about, and to confuse popularity with expertise, first of all, and also to confuse this paradox that we've got with the internet is that the vast majority of people who are able to give good advice can't online. Okay, so that's why when you're on Twitter, you'll see this thing where it's you'll see this it's a phenomenon, right? Where I think this again, it comes back, obviously the Dunning-Kruger effect is just one part of it, right? But I'm seeing this just general, and there's been a couple of people who've been actually saying this, that it's made us lazier, it's made us stupider, it has made us less curious. Like the fact that people who appoint themselves as political commentators and they haven't even Googled the term they're talking about to understand, and I'm flummoxed by it daily, where I'm like, that is not what that means. Like if you Google it, it is literally it's not even buried. It is like the first citation that you see in the Google results. But then their whole thing is, well, Google, see, when you live in a world where Google is a big censor and all the information that you have is correct, but you reject all information that is presented to you from the media, from Google, from all of those things, you end up in this world where you are really fucking stupid, first of all. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, yes, experts fuck up, okay? That's the process, that's going to happen. But at the same time, there is something to be said for expertise. And I don't know how to solve this problem. Like every other day I have an argument with someone who's fucking heard something on a podcast, okay? Now I'm streaming and, that I get the hypocrisy in it. I'm just talking about the general problem, which is that I shouldn't have to be live streaming. I shouldn't have to be on there. I shouldn't have to be online to be considered worthy of listening to. And even then I'm not, because I'm flooded out by a bunch of people who don't even know the basics, like basic political theory. They just sit there making vast generalizations and pandering to an audience, and it's easy to get fake likes and all that sort of stuff, but also it's easy to just say stupid shit. Okay, like one of the stupidest. This is related to to Zoom and AI, right? But it's the stupidest debate that I'm seeing right now. Oh my God, it is just, it's like this thing about React content, okay? Oh my God, it is so stupid. And like you sit there and it's just, American debate bollocks. And it's like, people are like, I don't know how you function. I don't know how you are. How are you richer than, like, it sits there and it's like, we're told about the meritocracy when we actually live in an idiocracy. Like you sit there and this is just idiocracy come to life, where you've got these people where, I think I generally ranted about this before, where you've got actual academics, people with PhDs in these things, people who put in the hard yards. Like I've said before, I read, for every stream that I do, and I'm not a performer and I don't have like a producer, I don't have all those sorts of things, but I read like journals like all day. I Google Scholar alerts all day. That's on top of my ordinary work and on top of everything else, right? These guys won't even Google something. But they're making millions of dollars because they sit there, and I'm not moaning about it. Obviously, I understand why, because they're panding, it's basically televangelism. But at the same time, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. But the React content debate. So you've got these fucking idiot streamers on, on Twitch. These fucking XQC, what's his name? Vaush, fucking Hassan Piker. I watch Hassan because I do like his analysis, But then you've got this whole ecosystem of drama, and it's exhausting, and it's just stupid. But it's not even good arguments. It's not even coming from a place where people know things. But then you've got actual people who are sort of putting themselves up there and out there, okay? And it's just such a weird problem where, in general, I think this is why AI is getting stupider, because it's learning from us. It's learning from them people. Like how things, it's like, yeah, you can train an AI on good stuff and then you put it out to the public and it's fucking stupid. I get that, right? That's why ChatGPT is getting dumber. Okay. Because the vast majority of humans are fucking stupid. And I get that, okay? And I don't mean that in a horrible way. I just mean it as it's a fact. Okay, like my interactions are very different to other people, where people just they will just go, what does that word mean? I don't know. Control T, open it, look it up yourself. What does this mean? What does that mean? I don't know. Why don't you look it up? Why don't you look it up or pay for a consult? If you run a business, pay for a fucking consult. Stop asking people to do free shit for you. That's one thing, okay? And that comes back to this, oops, sorry, my speaker. My speaker talks. The fucking speakers, anyway. But I'm saying, like, pay people to be experts and to advise based on your specific use case, your specific circumstances, your specific legal framework. Like, people are asking me about the Zoom terms of service, and, the laws in Australia are different to the laws in the US. Like, I do track a lot of the US law, mostly because it's fucking more funny and more crazy. Like, here, because it's sort of, the US tech suits at the moment are amazing. But it's like, I do track it, but, you need to get back to just valuing like the work that goes into actually understanding something, like as simple as like this terms of service permit. Like, there are experts in this specific space who track Zoom and will tell you that Zoom have never been like in compliance with the GDPR. And this is just another example. And it's the same thing, like Zoom and Google and Microsoft and, now Apple, they're all just they're just deciding that they can unilaterally just train their AI without our consent. And basically the only reason that people are arcing up about it is because, Reddit and Facebook and in Elon Musk's case in Twitter and all that sort of stuff, the only reason they're upset about it is because they're claiming that our data from that they stole from us is their IP. Like, that's the only reason they're fucking upset about it. And it's like, well, you got to think about the history here and understand like the sort of broader landscape. It's not just about the updated. I'm always surprised when people go, "Oh my gosh, it's like this is a problem. This is just a problem. It's just a problem in general that too many people are running businesses or starting businesses, okay, which is a great thing, okay, democratizing self-employment and all that sort of stuff. I'm on board with all that stuff. But there's tensions. There's friction tensions between these competing ideas, okay? And if you're not thinking that, if you're not sitting in the sort of gaps here where there's tension, okay? Like, and, this isn't talking about anyone in particular or anything like that. I'm always talking in the aggregate. If I've got a problem with a specific person, I'll always address it with them directly, right? But I'm just saying this is stuff that I've just watched online, which is that, you can be for the voice, for example. And you can say, well, I don't think it's going to work because I understand the political the history of referendum in this. If you actually know what you're talking about, you know that it's a big ask of people, especially with the timing of it, especially with people's economic situations, all of those sorts of things. It's like, well, no, that doesn't mean you're against it. And it doesn't mean you're a racist. And hurling abuse at people doesn't actually win anyone. All it does is make them double down against you and think that you want, if you're having to use coercion to persuade people, you don't have a persuasive argument. And it's like, okay, I didn't even notice, Matt. I'm sure Craig noticed. But I'm just saying, like, and again, I just want to emphasize that, I see this like it's like, you don't need to do that. That actually undermines the cause. Okay. Now, Jesus Bot hasn't been with us for a while. I think, do you know what's cool is I think Jesus Bot gave up on Taya, which is great. I'm undefeatable so far. But it's just, I'm still seriously, like I've gotten inroads with X and I'm working on it. Oh God, I wish I could go in and look at and get, they've got to audit my account. I'm trying to get them to audit and use, I swear there's just something going on. Doesn't make sense. Anyway, sorry. I have to drink water because of my dexamphetamine. But just generally, right, this is my general, my general advice, like when I'm talking about things like the Zoom TOS, this will be general advice because I think, well, why are you surprised that this is happening? Because this terms of service thing has, if you've been watching my shit, I've been saying that these stealth changes of terms of service have been happening for fucking ages. They've always been that way. Zoom is actually I found it funny because I can also understand why the legal team just decided that they needed to do this, because what Zoom was seeing, I imagine, again, reverse engineering, I'm not saying, I'm speculating, right? But what Zoom was seeing was all of these lawsuits coming up, right? So if you're watch the courts, it's fucking amazing. But if you're watching the courts, you're seeing that, like Musk is suing OpenAI for like scraping data. Reddit is suing OpenAI for and Microsoft for scraping data. There's a big conversation about the legal framework for AI. The EU are banning the EU. You can't run threads, for example. The threads can't run in the EU. Right, which is funny. Like, I don't know whether that's changed. I haven't kept up with it. But again, it's also in order to actually keep up with this stuff, it is more than a full-time job for any one person. So, I'm saying just you have, and this is what I meant about people just getting lazier. It's like, I do the same thing that you can do. Yes, I have more training and a little more experience and a little more sort of insider sort of insight, and I can explain stuff. But we have access to the same tools. Like, you can Google stuff, okay? You can look stuff up. You can take that article and go into ChatGPT and go, what is this? Explain this article to me like I'm 5. You have the tools. And it's like, look, I'm here to, hopefully, just hang out and, put the human episode, right? But it really is just like, this is just an overall frustration, like the paradox of the internet, which is that there's all these gurus and nobody fucking knows what the fuck they're talking about, okay? How you get cut through while being factual, but the problem is also regulatory, right? And obviously as I go through, I came up against this when I was doing the psych as well, and it's part of the reason why I sort of backed away from psych. And also from, but it's going to be an issue. But, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, psychologist, an accountant, or someone like that, if you're a registered psychologist or lawyer or anything like that, okay, as part of your professional conduct, right, this is something that I think needs to change. This is how you fight misinformation, is that the people who are most qualified to speak are least able to speak because of NDAs, because of the boards, because of all of this stuff. I remember having a lot of conversations with doctors. I've got quite a few doctor friends, right? And a lot of them working in EDs and stuff. And they had a wide range of views on COVID. But what you would have was this problem where if they actually tried to go in and correct that information, right? They tried to correct the information, that they would get hauled before the board for professional misconduct or for, whatever. And I think that's the problem, is that this misinformation problem needs to be addressed at that level when it comes to protection for people to be able to present themselves as experts and to be able to correct, this debate. I remember this debate happening a lot in the medical community. Back when I was in med school or starting for about 3 months. Because I was like, I keep I keep deciding I want to do something proper with my life, and then I give up because it's like the mountains are too high, but I'm determined to get this one done. And it's, but when I remember that debate occurring with doctors like, what's his name? Oh, the bald guy. He's really great. And Kevin MD and those sorts of things, like those ethical lines and those restrictions around the board and the ability to speak generally, okay, about issues and correct misinformation. But you can very easily run up against sort of, those sorts of things, right? Again, sometimes, I'm amazed that Jordan Peterson hasn't been disciplined already. Obviously there's extreme versions of that, but that's where some of these problems are, NDAs, again, for people who aren't in a professional board, there's something needs to give here where experts are allowed free rein to be able to talk freely and able to address things freely. And as long as they don't sort of cross a certain line in terms of breaching, obviously breaching client confidence and, all those other things that are there for a reason, that you can, address it. And that's a gap. Those things are the things that are being figured out through the law, right? So Jordan Peterson is, I think it's the Vancouver, actually. I think it's Is it Quebec or I think it's actually Vancouver, isn't it? Anyway, no, it's actually just the Canadian Psych Board. I don't think it's actually a state thing. I think it's actually anyway, side point. But I say that is a fairly clear thing where I don't believe that he is actually mentally fit. He is showing behaviours that make him not fit to practice. I would say that he's, I think that that's a fairly, again, I don't want to get into that because I don't want to talk about it. But one thing, this is like with the GDPR, like people come and ask me and they go, well, what do you think of this Zoom thing? And I say, well, where are you? What are you doing? What's the nature of your work? How willing, tech is always about a trade-off, okay, between privacy, between cost, that's where something, what you pay for when you pay for a consult, okay? And I've got two really good tech guys in the chat right now who will validate what I'm saying if you need a man to validate it, right? Which is that what makes a really good, head of IT or CIO or tech leader or anything in IT, right? Any kind of good, that runs a complex tech project. What differentiates them between others, okay, that are ordinary is that they'll just bolt on a whole bunch of tools with no real consideration for the future, much like the hustle bros and, the quick buck people versus the people who will understand and they have to go through and they'll go, okay, so what are our requirements? What are the risks? What are the trade-offs? Because all tech has trade-offs, okay, with cost, risk, benefits, privacy, regulation is like obviously now a bigger factor, cybersecurity, but you make those trade-offs, okay? From a user point of view, right, you've got exactly. There you go. I've got the endorsement of a man. So anyway, but I'm saying like it's about trade-offs. Like I think people don't understand that like technology in particular, like it's all held together fairly loosely and with there's no perfect system. And I think this is also the difference between somebody who has like enough projects under their belt and enough experience under their belt to know that if you go in with an attitude of perfect being the enemy of the good, your project's not going to work. Because there is no perfect product and there is no perfect solution, and every solution has a cost associated with it. And so you get these 20-something tech bros who are like, this is the best tool ever. Yes, but you're trading all your data. Okay, this is the cheap. I still to this day do not understand how Zoom got traction during the pandemic. It was very clever, but like it's the shittest product. Like I don't understand. But hang on a second. I'm not going to last long on this stream. I'm not feeling very well. But my general feeling about this, Paul's home. He's not feeling well either, I think. No, but Zoom got traction because it was free. But the thing is, you have Skype, you have like Meet, you have FaceTime. I mean, FaceTime's not as different because it's like, in the iOS platform. But there were so many other free options. But it's like they also capped it at 45. Most people have a Gmail account, right? But yeah, so anyway, it was just like, I found that really funny. It was like, how would you be? You're like, imagine you're, if you were like the head of Skype and you've spent like decades building that product. I mean, Skype's not great, but it's just very funny. I mean, WhatsApp has video conferencing. They all have, Telegram has video conferencing. They all have it. I mean, some of them didn't at the time, in fairness, but it's just funny that Zoom just sort of took over, right? It's just hilarious. But anyway, whatever. Yeah, I know why. Okay. So being rhetorical, but yes. Okay, so I know why. I know why people used Zoom. It was a rhetorical thing for a bit. Okay, so thanks, Craig, for the explanation. I appreciate it. So I was just saying a bit, which is that imagine being, like all of these other video conferencing solutions where there's plenty of options available and Meet, Hangouts, whatever, most people have a Gmail account, all that sort of thing. And it just suddenly it just became everyone's on Zoom. I find that funny, right? You'd be gutted. So, So it was just so about the Zoom thing, all right? Sorry, my AI. So you distracted me with the mansplaining. Okay. I sat there and I was like doing the maths about whether I should fucking do it. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, it's like, yes, I know why. It's like suspension of like things to make a broader point about how people just, it was frictionless and people went on to the easy solution without thinking about the cost of it. There's always a cost associated, right? There's always a cost associated with it. Maybe if you hear the word mansplaining a lot, you should maybe reflect on why. So, because I don't use it very often, but okay, maybe reflect on why you hear that. Because I know why. I was making a broader point, okay, which was that people uncritically signed up for a tool which was already known to be like a problem. Like you had those early security problems with Zoom, right? You had some of those, it was just, obviously they created an experience that made it attractive to people. But they capped it at 45 minutes, which I found funny. That's a benefit for someone like me who hates meetings running over. I love the fact that there's a 45-minute thing that kicks in and goes, oh, sorry, do we really need to call back? I like that feature, but like Meet and those other, and you also got like Jitsi and you've got all those other video conferencing solutions that are open source and free. It's just funny. So, but because they created a frictionless experience, but this is where, I've talked about friction before, where the easier the experience, the more skeptical you need to be about what you're actually handing over in terms of a free product, right? Because this is what something like Zoom, they've got to make money somewhere. And they've also, if they're a public company, I can't remember if Zoom went public yet, did they? See, that's where you can answer because I asked. If Zoom went public, I can't remember. But they're obviously, they're trying to, I can't remember if they did the IPO yet or not. I don't keep up with these things. Like I said, you could it's a full-time job to keep up with one thing in one company. And I really don't care. It's not my area of interest, but people keep asking me things. So it's, but basically they've got shareholder interests, right? That is number one. So basically, they've got to make money and they've got to continue to make more money. So it's not just about the fact that they're going to break even. They're not going to sit there and go, I think we've made enough money off the back of the pandemic and enough people are using it for free. I think we're good. We're good at this level. You have to show end on end on end, quarter on quarter growth at all times, okay, if you're a public company, okay? If you're a private company, greedy owners are going to do that too, okay? Like obviously when I ran my business, I always tried to run it on a sort of enough, not more mentality where, like I wouldn't take money to grow. And, obviously my business didn't survive because I'm not a greedy cunt. So it's just, you can't survive against companies that are like have that continual growth thing, right? So, so it is public. Oh, it was 2019. Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure because I don't, obviously don't keep up. So they were already a public company. So what you saw was a frictionless fucking experience. That's, anyway. So always be suspicious of a frictionless experience that's selling you something that's easy. Like during the pandemic, it was like, why is everyone just flocking to this fucking thing? And again, rhetorical question. I know why. I'm saying, why was everyone flocking to this fucking thing when they know that there's a cost? And the thing is that privacy experts and like especially GDPR experts and people like that were expressing concerns about Zoom, but people won't listen. And sometimes it's like, well, it takes you to, and it's my early rant, right? Sorry, Craig, I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just being assertive. And it's just like, what was I going to say? What was I going to say? Can't remember. Oh, yeah. So the pandemic, it's like, well, you've been warned and warned and warned and warned and warned about like these tools. And part of it is people who are trying to tell you before it gets to the point where you've given away data or you've given stuff away or before it costs you, and they have your best interests at heart. and you're not listening. So a lot of people who they're kind of disinclined to say, oh, here, let me help you for free now, even though like the information is widely available. You should be doing your due diligence before you choose these tools anyway. Don't be such a fucking idiot. But, I'm nice, so I don't do that. Anyway, I'm not well. I'm not well, sorry. Between not being well and like that thing, it's like, yeah. BlackRock owns fucking everything. Between BlackRock, Vanguard, and like, a couple of other, and Citadel and all these other fucking like hedge funds, we don't own anything anyway. So it's not any one company. BlackRock own, they own everything. They own a chunk of everything, and they run the show. That's just, that's the problem. Centralized wealth, corporate interest, shareholder value, hedge funds, always needing quarter on quarter growth, and no one gives a fuck about you and your interests. They're going to do this. But again, when people like me try to say that stuff and do that analysis and say, well, maybe capitalism's the problem. Oh no, it's not capitalism, it's corporatism. I'm smart. Because, I listened to a podcaster about a guy who said it was corporatist. It's like, it's so stupid. It's moronic. These fucking quibbles, these libertarians are so stupid. They're so fucking stupid. US libertarians. Oh my God, they're the dumbest fuckers in the world. Anyway, so... but yeah, so it's just like who you listen to. It's like, yeah, anyway. So it's funny because all the annoying questions and no one listens to you when you're an actual fucking expert. But then they come and ask when they expect you to do free fucking question answering all the time. But then they also, it's like they don't listen to you when you do. Like that's been my experience too. Like when I was consulting with businesses, right? They hire you for a consult and then you tell them something they don't want to hear. And then they blame you for telling them something they don't want to hear. And it's like, well, okay, then fair enough. I gave you my advice. You paid for my advice. This is my advice. If you won't do it, that's not my problem. Okay. And that's kind of the perpetual problem that we've got is people not bothering. They just want everything handed to them. This is why we're ended up in this like thing with the consulting firms, with the government, because people can't be asked. They just want to outsource every problem and they don't want to have to think because they're just too overloaded. They're too fucking stressed. They're too busy trying to pay their rent. And, they just go, oh, fuck it. Whatever gets someone off my back so I can get back to arguing with people on Twitter about politics, about shit that does nothing and accomplishes nothing. So I'll just outsource parts of my job to anyone. And then you end up in a position where you can't be trusted because you're working at home and you're outsourcing everything and you're not actually doing anything. Bullshit job shit. Because Zoom have also come back and they've said that they want people back in the office. And it's like, well, okay, I have two thoughts there. Okay, I've always worked at home. Okay, so I'm as someone who's always worked at home running my own show, I have something to say about this, which is, first of all, it's fucking expensive. You have no idea how much you spend on working at home. So what they've done is they shuffle the overheads to you because if you can't, they've made it so that you can't claim most of the fucking expenses back on tax anyway. You can claim a small portion of it. But if you're like working at home, you'll find that they've shifted the overhead to you. Okay, so that's one down thing. Yeah, you get freedom. Okay, great, fine, get it. Cool. You should have the right. You should have the flexibility. Like mums, me particularly, working at home has been of great benefit when my kids were little, right? And especially with an autistic son who wasn't at school and needed homeschooling, the ability to work around things. Yes, it's costed me a lot in my career because I'm stuck in this fucking town. And I've had to give up opportunities and not be able to take things and not be able to work as much as I would like and not be able to take certain opportunities. And, like I said, being so fucking exhausted trying to survive that I can't upskill or do it, whatever. Okay. All of these things. There's downsides to it, that's like the parenting thing is like, well, that's being a parent, right? That's your lot. But at the same time, like working at home, you don't have balance, right? Paul's been at home, I think, for the last week and his neck is fucked, okay? Regardless, because at least when you're at the office, you're getting up and you're walking around, you're talking to people, you're doing whatever. That incidental exercise thing, like I think that, that adds up. Okay. Also that, there's other things, right? There's lots and lots of other things, right? It's not just straightforward, but also I can understand how, with remote work, like at the moment where people will just, like, you've seen this stuff where people are just outsourcing and offshore and they're juggling 3 online remote jobs. And again, I have no problem with that. I'm one of those people that's like, you find a fucking like loophole in the system, go for it. But at the same time, those people are, greedy people are always the reason why we can't have nice things. Okay, which is that there's always this small cohort of fuckwits, the 10% of fuckwits who make things so that we can't have nice things because they're not doing the right thing. And this applies very much to the remote work thing. Like, most people will do the right thing and they just want to be able to work in comfort. They get more done, all that sort of stuff. But then you find the 10% of fuckwits who are like double dipping, triple dipping and juggling jobs and, doing all of that sort of stuff, taking the piss, right? Putting an AI into their calls and, all of these sorts of things to try and exploit the system. Again, socialist me goes, fucking go for it. Boss me goes, fuck you for that, because that's my money. It depends on, again, like I've been on all sides of the coin here, which is that a big part of that relationship between worker and manager, not so much the company, but is built on trust, right? Hang on, what do we got? Beck said, there is no requirement to follow the consultant advice within the government framework. You just have to show a Big Four invoice. Exactly. But like, it's intrinsically linked to this. I know that I was talking about Zoom, but some of it is that they've said, I'm just trying to get people to zoom out, so to speak. Oh, fuck, I look like turd and I'm feeling like turd. But try to like not be distracted by the minutiae, because of course their corporate legal team, in light of all of these lawsuits that are coming, are going to put that clause in. They tried their luck. Like, that's what they've been doing for years. That's what Twitter did. They just put these clauses in without consent, right? Now, there is an argument for that being unconscionable, but there hasn't been the right case, okay? So Megan Murphy, a bunch of people have been trying this unconscionable contract angle in the US, and it just hasn't been the right case. You could still get there, but it's not the right, not circumstances. In Australia, perhaps. But you got to understand that they've been doing this for years. People are still trying to fight these things. And this, again, I'm going to defend them for it, because what they've done is not necessarily different to any other company, which is that they're all training our data. Microsoft definitely are. Okay, Google definitely are. Amazon definitely are. They're all using it. And also they did actually update, and in good faith, they did actually update the terms of service, right? So what Zoom did, let me read. So they updated the terms of service for training AI on user content without opt-out. So the problem was that they just said, so the words were around, hang on, so they had sections, this is boring shit. So even if you're in tech and you want to do tech law, this stuff's dry. So, I'm trying to make it as fast and interesting as possible, but there's a couple of sections that were concerning people, okay? Now, so it was what's the term? Service-generated data, okay? So what that means, so you need to, that was not necessary, that service-generated data. So what that refers to is related to the content and data that is around, it's kind of like metadata, but it's like usage data. I'm just trying to think of an example, right? Yeah, where else do you train but publicly available data? Yeah. But it's basically okay, so it's telemetry data, product usage data, so like your stats, how you use it, how you interact, right? Diagnostic data, so when it crashes or anything like that, okay, and similar content or data. This was where they kind of, it was vague, right? That Zoom collects in connection with users' use of their services or software. Now, a lot of doctors use it for telehealth. A lot of, psychologists use it. A lot of people use it for health, right? And that's a big concern, especially, people where there's a confidentiality aspect to the call, right? Which is most businesses, I mean, I would argue that most business stuff is bullshit and no one gives a fuck about your trade secret. You care more about your secrets than anyone else. Like, no one gives a fuck. But like in terms of highly personal data, like health data, like that's obviously like very clearly a breach of that stuff, right? So anything that's like general knowledge, like strategy, I don't think that is, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But people freaked out over that, obviously, and it was around that sort of other data. So it also said that they had where are we? So they also extended to them. So what you did was you granted Zoom the like exclusive, like complete rights. Okay. So basically handing over everything you say to them. Okay. So you extended the right to modify, distribute, process, share, maintain, and store such data for any purpose to the extent and in the manner permitted under applicable law. Now, obviously that when you read it, that's like, well, yeah, by default, that applies to the GDPR, it applies to local law, it applies to all this stuff. And basically what they did was they made it that it was like an explicit permission to take that data, right? What constitutes usage data, right? And people got spooked out by the wording of the contract, okay, which was that basically they had a license to use it for training AI, okay. It was very poorly worded. Like I don't know how it got through. Like again, this is where like siloed organizations, you go, okay, I understand what they meant, because they were basically like, well, this is boilerplate. I mean, to be honest, it's fairly boilerplate. It's not really unusual in the context of all the AI lawsuits that are happening at the moment, which is that they're trying not to get sued for use of data to train their AI. Now, why would Zoom need AI? Like they're offering, so it's part of their product offering, right? So I've only done a little bit of research because I don't really use Zoom, so it's not really a thing. I use Meet. But to, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, they've been offering sort of features, right, where you can like have a meeting, right, and it will automatically transcribe the audio from that meeting and create notes. Like that's a really valuable tool, okay? Like that's actually incredibly valuable. But also remember the faces, right? All those funny effects, all those sorts of things, those are also a form of AI. So like forming those, so some of that data is like, facial movements, facial impressions, the structure, so that the AI can learn from your face the bunny ears position. Like it can be, it's not all sinister. It's not all about sort of LLMs or information. It depends on how it was just a broad kind of boilerplate term. Okay. And I found it it was quite funny actually, because people really just sort of misunderstood it. So what they did was they kind of obviously gotten the shit over it. But they said it kind of created that where basically they could train AI based on like the content of the meeting, okay? And obviously people are a bit paranoid about that. Yeah, I was thinking about that, like, yeah, and that's another thing where the product, I understand from the product, this is a problem with tech, I think, in general, which is that teams aren't talking to each other. They are, like, this is just a siloing problem, that you don't have people who speak to other teams about what's going on. There's no real, and I would hope that I fit in this area a little bit as well, which is that multidisciplinary thing. Like I saw this with the CRCs and, there's not a lot of multidisciplinary people and not a lot of multidisciplinary teams where, I mean, if you're in the legal team and it seems like a stakeholder problem and a comms problem, and I'm sure Beck would agree with me too, which is that it's a comms problem in the fact that they should have sought feedback from the product and UX team on the users and what users were likely, like this seems like an internal failure of comms, right? This is what a good stakeholder manager does, right? Which is that they would go, okay, well, what's the landscape? So legal did the right thing. See, this is what's funny is that the legal team did the right contract. There's nothing wrong with it. But they misunderstood the sentiment around it all, and people were getting worried about, like, obviously this stuff. I love the fact that this stuff is now out. It's sort of in the zeitgeist. It's in the conversation. I mean, this is back when social media were like first launched, right? people we just signed up and yes, whatever, we want to use the thing, whatever. Give me your firstborn. It's cool. Yeah. Whereas at least now, I think there's enough people who have learned from social. And, I was saying that before, where we've learned nothing from social, but I think we have to an extent, which is that Zoom very much have relied on the trust us, bro approach. And it's like, that's not enough anymore, because you broke our trust and you continue to break our trust. And there's been a big gotcha before. I apologize for the shaking. But yeah. So Beck said it's not a problem. She's correct. It's not a problem in tech. It's all organizations. Absolutely. But like, this is one of those things where multidisciplinary teams, this is why smaller teams work better. But again, I keep coming back to the importance of like good stakeholder management, and the problem with like just lawyers. They did a great to a lawyer that was clear. And also it was clear to a lawyer who just assumed that user trust was there. So the currency, the exchange that was going on with this terms of service, they vastly underestimated how much the landscape had changed. Like this is linked very much to the lawsuits that are coming through. Like if you go on Google Scholar and look at US case law, just look at Twitter, what the crazy shit like it's coming up, just suing Twitter and Facebook and stuff. And it's like actually unhinged stuff, right? It's funny as hell. But, the sentiment is to not, Facebook, Twitter, and X. Actually, I need to actually correct something I said in the previous streams, where I said that Musk was phoenixing Twitter to get out of Twitter's liabilities. It doesn't seem to be the case. So the things that I've seen, Twitter, that they've basically just filed to take on that, like the same thing. So just so in case, there's a rumor that he's trying to get out of things, I haven't seen any evidence of that yet. He's kicking the can down the fucking road, I'll tell you that now. Like, he's definitely kicking the can down the road, but that's his right. Okay, that's his right under the legal system to do what he does. Like what he did was to change jurisdiction. They're doing a bit of a jurisdiction fuckery, and moving from California to Delaware and all this stuff. And obviously, that's just I don't know what to say about. It's like, it's not fair, but it's fine to do that, right? But anyway, so this is the challenge, I think. And this is why why I'm studying law, and tech law in particular, is because I see this gap. There's this gap between people who are lawyers and the lawyers who work in tech, and tech people who product people, but tech people who are lawyers who understand user stuff is kind of, the sentiment and the comms and that sort of gap between user trust. Like, they're kind of missing that point. So the lawyers are just lawyering. The lawyers are doing their lawyer shit. Okay. And they're just doing but they're miscalculating. And it's the same thing with brand managers when they miscalculate the culture wars. They fuck around and find out. It's the same thing with lawyers, is that there's a few gaps around, general internet user trust, and how that can blow up in your face without you realizing it. This is a really good example of that, because there's nothing strictly wrong with the terms of service, but basically people had questions, and Zoom amended it. They've since amended it and said it's explicitly opt-in. You can opt, and it doesn't include the content, the actual words, okay, out of the... actually, one of the cool AI tools was you could use... So this is where there's there's that tension, which is there's the cool and cool creepy thing, right? There's always that equal parts sort of cool and creepy. And unfortunately, the thing that determines whether technology is cool or creepy becomes trust. But we're working in an environment where trust is gone. And so that's that, it's like, well, people, they abused our trust with social, okay? People, they're still not really addressing the user trust issue with Twitter and what Twitter did to people's lives. And that's why, you'll see me supporting some of the things that Musk does, like the funding of, these lawsuits. Whether he comes good on that, that remains to be seen. But that's a good thing, okay, because Twitter did breach people's trust. They continue to do so, and it's people are hurting over it. It has destroyed lives, and they don't have any recourse, and so they're gonna lash out. But it's until we as an industry, address the issue of trust, right? And I don't think people realise how far gone that is. And I think that we've assumed trust for too long and good faith, and you can't assume good faith anymore. We have to assume that these contracts are unfair and predatory, and that they're just trying to get our data and cut us out and not compensate us and replace us and make us, and abuse us and abuse our rights, because that's what's been happening for the last decade or two, right? So I think people are very much, sorry, I got itchy nose. People are rightfully suspicious of things like Zoom. And so even though the letter of the contract might be okay, it's breached trust. And it's the same thing with the having to return to work in the office thing. It's the same thing about what do you do when someone breaks your trust? Like, working from home is another aspect of, trust. And that's a two-way street. Okay, which is that, you can go down the road of surveillance and mouse jiggling and trying to beat them, and juggling 4 jobs to fuck them over, and your mindset. But I don't like that, because you basically are undermining the kind of trust and good faith and the social contract that exists, that that most people want to see happen. And I think and this isn't, I'm a big critic of HR and managers and all that sort of stuff. Of course, I'm pro worker. But at the same time, there are people who just take the fucking piss, and they don't think it's not about you versus the organization, but it's about you and your co-workers, because you fucking around and taking the piss out of a work from home thing, right? That affects a mother who can't, that affects other people. And I think that that's really the shift, which is that people have just become so fucking selfish and they become lazy. And I think it's okay to say that and still say, I support this idea, right? I support this idea of remote work. I do it. It's great. But I'm someone who actually works. I'm someone who actually gets stuff done. I'm someone who, I can understand why people might be resentful of someone who does fuck all and works from home and takes the piss, right? And Paul's the same. He works from home 3 days a week. And, he works long hours, okay? And he's always working. And it's he does the right thing. He shows up to all the things. But then there's the people who are taking the piss and pretending to be at work. Well, and it's how do we deal with, again, the 10% of fuckwits? Taya's 10% of fuckwits rule. All of the laws, all of the cases, all of the rules, all of the things, most of us trust each other. Most of us do the right thing. But these, 10% of selfish fuckwits, whether it's trolls on Twitter, whether it's fucking, political parties, whether it's, people who work from home, whether it's tech companies, okay, who have fucked people over, and then they put the whole industry into disrepute, whether it's business owners, whether it's marketers, whether it's anyone. It's those small portion of selfish fuckwits that we need to address. And unfortunately, linking it back to theory, capitalism caters to the 10% of fuckwits, okay? Socialism prioritizes the needs of the fucking 100%. Okay, so, and that's where it's okay, broadly in terms of school, not you're quibbling about corporatism and fucking blah, 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 voluntarism and all that nonsense. Okay, so Microsoft Teams and Slack were also huge beneficiaries of the pandemic. Yeah, where are we? So let me look at the chatty chats. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go soon. But I hope I had made sense anyway. Matt's going off on Elmo again. Hang on, just give me a sec. Yeah, but that's the balance, right? Yeah, Matt's right about the surveillance. And I think that I try to create a balance there, right? Which is that I do try to go, well, I understand, again, like I said, you can't assume trust because trust has been broken, and because we live in conditions where we assume that the bosses are the bad guys because they haven't done anything to prove that we're, to win trust back. They've done nothing to win trust at all. Government, like public trust is down, even in Australia, even though, you know, we've got a sort of higher public trust. Generally, you know, there's a lot to come back from. People are being fucked. Okay, because we've seen like that, you know, corporate gouging has made, you know, like causing this inflation. Interest rates are put up that fuck people for their mortgages when that's not even going to help, because it's the corporations will just put their money up. We're just sitting there going, oh, well, we know our rent's going to go up because the landlord's going to just like take it as an opportunity, whether it's like not, you know, that like that's the reality that we live in. And, you know, people's wages are decreasing. Everything is more expensive. We have, you know, everything is the gig economy. We have no rights. I mean, we've pretty much given up on the idea of there being any kind of retirement when you know, I mean, me particularly, I don't fucking have anything because I'm self-employed. And, you know, I've been self-employed forever. I live invoice to invoice, okay? I have spent years where every Christmas, if I don't get paid before December 15th, I don't fucking, because everyone goes away. If I don't make sure I get paid, you know, December 15th, everyone fucks off to the end of January. You know, like you know, acting like being paid at Christmas is a fucking Christmas miracle and a favour, begging people to pay you. It's like, that's the system. It rewards people to do that. And you're treated as the bad guy for saying, you know what, pay me. You know what, I think that I'm old enough and I've worked hard enough that I should have access to housing at this point in my life. Right? Last night, because we got solar installed, like the landlord fell on you know, landlord from the heavens parted, and somehow we got solar installed on our home, and like we're acting like we won the fucking lottery. And it's like, well, that's not really how it should be. It should be that, you know, but we also expect that our rent's going to go up again. So it's like, and because our power bills have been killing us, absolutely killing us. And it's like, well, we live in an area, okay, where we live in not an area, we live in an environment and a culture that blames the victims of this system, that where, of course, they're going to lose trust in the fucking, in everything. And then you put this well into, you know, like, this is, again, you could do a class analysis of legal departments just on their own, which is you have to be immensely privileged to think that trust is a factor that you can bank on writing a contract these days. Like, I would assume, like, one of the things that I've always done, I've always written my own contracts. And they've always, you know, obviously have them vetted, but I always write my own contracts. I'm good at that kind of thing. And you always write your contract as though because once you're in court, the contract's only for when you're in court. Okay. And if you have to use the letter of the contract, if you have to have a conversation about the contract, outside the first part, but you know, if the lettering of the contract becomes the conversation, you've already lost the fucking client, right? It's not that it's a breakdown as soon as it's like you know, contested or whatever the fuck, right? You build on trust and build on relationships, right? And the contract is really just there as an insurance for if, you know, that contract goes sour, and it, you know, sometimes does. Okay. That's just, you haven't been in business long enough if you haven't been sued at least once or twice, and especially sued frivolously and with a lie. Okay. So you'd be surprised. But, right. So let me have a look. So AI, okay, it's a wall of text. So sorry. But, you know, but the thing is, they can't assume, trust us, bro, is not anything to be relied on at the moment, because trust is gone. Right? So the product team don't want the no from the legal team, so they don't include them. And that's what I mean about like the multidisciplinary thing, exactly. And also like bringing legal in earlier is what they do is, I know how they do this, because when you're a vendor, you go through this same fucking process. And basically it gets to legal at the last minute, and the project is basically like, legal is just a check-off point where you go, oh no, we've done everything, we've paid the bill, we've done all the things, oh, and it's launching tomorrow, so quick, hurry up, legal, look at this. And legal go, yep, okay. And it's like, well, that's not how it should be. It needs to be more of a collaborative approach early on, which assumes and doesn't take for granted user trust, especially like the product team should be saying like I'm amazed that this got through. It must have been I'm really surprised this got through. but this is the arrogance of tech in particular, where they just assume everyone loves them, and we're making the world a better place. That self bullshit echo chamber where it's like, no, most people hate you and they don't trust you, and they're fucking scared of you right now and the power that you've got. And like, I think I deal in that sentiment every day, so it's like easier for me to see. But you got some win and trust back. And honestly, I think that you want my prediction for the future, which is I think that we will have to get to a point where there is a data dividend. Okay, maybe look that up. There's a whole thing. There's a whole thing about that where basically we all get compensated for our data, and we receive a dividend every year or whatever as part of that. Okay, I think that that's really the only way to sort of correct this stuff, right? And they're going to cry, and they're going to, it's like, cry harder. You stole it. It's not yours. Give it back, or compensate. And I think that that's going to be where it has to go, right? Where are we? Okay, the thongs. All right, I'm with you now. Beck mistyped. Okay. So I can walk through whole buildings at work for days and they're empty, and you can never get things from the people who work there. Yeah, and I don't know. I think work is just, it's fundamentally broken. People, again, like I could go into the sort of, alienation and all that sort of stuff, but, like people are alienated, which means they're not motivated and they're lonely, and we've checked out and we're just going through the motions. Read Bullshit Jobs if you haven't already. It's fucking marvelous. It's an audiobook. It's David Grieber is like one of my personal heroes. I love him. But he goes through this sort of, where something has to give. Something has to give, and again, I could probably tell you that history tells you that when it gives, it's probably going to be pretty fucking horrible for a bit if we don't address it. But, the thing that I can do is at least try to get people thinking. I know that there's some fairly serious tech leaders in my chat right now, and I go, well, maybe I can talk to people and go, you know what, you can't assume trust anymore. People hate you. You need to cross your T's and dot your I's, and you need to be working harder, not just doing campaigns, not just doing buying ads and billboards and, saying trust us. Remember what I said in my last stream about what my grandma used to say, which is never trust a man who says trust me, and especially never trust someone who breaks your trust. But once that trust is broken, which happened during the pandemic, like whether or not you justify the labeling and all of that sort of overreach, okay, which, again, I can understand from a government and public health and, that angle, I can understand where they're coming from, okay? However, you can't just do that and censor people and suppress people and send people down a rabbit hole of paranoia and conspiratorial thinking and just go, oh, well, we're the authority. Use it. Oh, well, you can trust us again. It doesn't work that way. You got to win people's trust back with actions and go, oh, well, we fucked up. We fucked this up. We're sorry. Not this fucking doubling down on this evil fucking, like that CCDH stuff that I've talked about, these fucking orgs that are like corrupt as fuck, not double down on it. And that's why, again, I'll defend Elon Musk more, because he at least seems to be trying to fix the problem a little bit. I don't know. I can only go by what's on the outside, I'm afraid. But, he's at least being somewhat transparent, committing to transparency. Zuck's just acting like a fucking arrogant piece of shit. And it's like, he's actually just driving me fucking nuts, that guy. He's driving me nuts. The arrogance. And it's like, you know what? Like, as much as I laugh about the people that are suing in the courts, like suing Twitter, one of the ones, I posted it on Facebook, which was the woman who's suing Twitter for breaching her right. So she wasn't breaching Twitter. She wasn't suing Twitter for banning her account. She was suing Twitter for banning Trump because she had a right to argue and engage with Trump. It's great. But at the same time, that's a symptom. This stuff is a symptom. These people who are, they don't have the right answers because trust is gone, and they just assume that there's a conspiracy, or, it's like, well, yeah, I can laugh at them and think they're hilarious, but I've also watched people just disappear down a fucking rabbit hole while no one else, cared. You know, like I remember talking to a number of people in the media and like academics and people like that who should care and should know better than me. And they shrug and go, oh, well, you can't save everyone. It's like, who are you? What's wrong with you? Right? That everyone matters, you know, and it's just funny, right? But it's like you need to win back the trust. And I think that, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, for, again, asterisk, if, but, whatever, you know, Musk does seem to be trying to fix some things. I don't agree with them all, but at the same time, we don't know yet, okay? And a lot of the people who do need to be showing more empathy and trying to win trust back are doubling down and being absolutely horrible. And, you know, so, you know, like this political extremism and arguing and all that stuff, that's a symptom of a bigger problem, which is that, you know, like it's a symptom of people's isolation, confusion, fear, trauma, you know, all those other things that are going unaddressed. Okay. So anyway, yeah, same as a prenup. Contracts are for breakups. Yeah, and that's why with this AI thing, it was actually more just like the intention is always just if someone sues them for using the thing as they intended to use it, that they're covered. Okay, it's more of a preemptive thing that's like, oh, well, they're covered in case someone sues them, that the contract says that they have the right to do that. And we're finding that because I was reading some of the judgments with the Twitter bans, right? And, you know, obviously I've read them before, but Megan Murphy lost on that basis, which is the fact that, you know, like, I mean, her case was thin to begin with, like it wasn't really very well argued, but, you know, like eventually I think some will get through this unconscionable contract stuff. But, you know, some of the legal arguments are actually quite compelling, okay, which is that, you know, yeah, anyway. Yeah, so anyway, engineers are the worst. They are fucking terrible, horrible. I'm not getting into the mask and jab shit, you know, like I'm pro-vaccination, you know, like it's... people they had you try running anything at that time, you can't. Everyone think everyone, it's like they're armchair footballers and there's armchair sports people, they're armchair umpires, right? And they're fucking armchair politicians as well. People who think like if they ran things would be great. And it's like, you don't know, that job was hard. That job was really hard, and everyone gets a pass. We can post-mortem it and do better next time, but everyone gets a pass. It's a hard fucking job and no one was going to win. And the propaganda fuckheads, like I said, the 10% of fuckwits ruined it. So if you know, these idiots had just not been such children, like Rebel News and those fucking idiots had not been such children, then, you know, yeah, it's more complicated than that. It's not just about, I'm so sick of this for and against thing. People, armchair people arguing on the internet about shit. It's like, just who cares who cares? You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, well, look, I Googled it for an hour. I now know I have opinions. It's like, well, no, do you know what I have an expert opinion on with this stuff? How the process works, how the political process works, and I defer to that process, and I know that it's going to go that way. And it's not an uncritical trust in authority, it's that it doesn't fix anything or change anything. And I know that there's no way to I have no opinion on it because I don't know. People need fewer opinions, much fewer opinions. And I think the real solution to misinformation is freeing up the experts to talk without, and also stricter regulation on media. Because, you know, we went through this with like yellow journalism with the printing press, but we've had the same problem with the internet, which is people just sharing bullshit. And it's not your right to share bullshit. There still needs to be some standards. And it's also not free speech to do like campaign, like proper, you're still regulated by ACMA, you're still regulated by various things. These regulations still exist. If you're in the media, you still have to meet the classifications and, you know, all that sort of stuff. The legal framework is more complicated and you don't have as many rights as you think. And also, like, you don't have the right to just overtly bullshit. You're allowed to be stupid. It's not criminal to be stupid. Okay. But it is criminal but it is sometimes criminal to be reckless. And also, you know, malicious And, those things are quite clear. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but there's no freedom of speech argument that isn't complicated by, like other stuff. And I get so tired of the freedom of speech bros. More rights! I need more rights! It's like, okay, name one. What right? Which right? And which statute? Which law? Give me a case. And I'm not being arrogant. I'm just saying, for fuck's sake, what rights? Rights! It's my rights! China! It's my rights! That shit. I just go, fuck it. Stricter rules around Matt running. Yeah, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't run things. I should run everything. I have no business running everything. Anything. I stay in my lane. Like even with the Zoom thing, I'm like, people stop asking me dumb things. I'm not a GDPR person. I don't know. I know enough about the GDPR to make things compliant on the website, but I really don't give a fuck. Like I don't care about privacy law. I care about, I care more about freedom of expression law and media law, not so much privacy law. I mean, obviously they overlap, but yeah. Anyone asking for more rights and how they are persecuted is always countered by asking what rights they don't have. Yeah. Well, the thing is, it depends. The answer is you all have everyone has theoretical rights, unless you have a ruling for, like I said, it comes back to that case by case thing. Unless you have been to the High Court or a court, you reach the top part of where you can appeal, like federal court or whatever, okay? If you don't have a specific ruling on your specific case, you have a theoretical right to things that isn't enforced. And I think people need to really kind of reframe the way. It's like you have the right to do stuff because no one's locking you up for doing it. Okay? It's a theoretical thing. It is not something that allows you to be a fuckwit. And if you fuck around and find out, if you think you've got a right to something and you let's say you incite, violence or, your Nazis show up to your rally or whatever, okay? And you have a theoretical right to something. Yeah, you do, because no one's enforcing it. But if you get arrested, then you still have a theoretical, let's test the law. Let's see how that goes. Oh, look, the High Court, 10 years later, turns out I've got rights. You see, like, do you want to be part of that process? It's like, it's all, that's why arguing about law, this is I think my beef with the internet and legal arguments, like internet lawyers in particular. And I don't even argue about the law. I just, it's like, okay, you got a theoretical right to something. Let's wait for court. Okay, yeah, that's all right. I think you've got rights, probably. But in Australia, you've got, unless it's an arrest, you've got freedom. It's sort of, it's like, unless you've got, Anyway, your default is that you've got rights to do stuff. But if you're arrested, then you'll find out soon enough. Okay, it's like forgiveness, not permission type of shit. But arguing about stuff that is going to require like a team of barristers and fucking lawyers to argue, it's like, well, on the internet, it's like it's the biggest waste of time in the whole wide world. I don't understand why people, and political arguments as well. It's like, well, it's basically like sports. It's like, well, people, if you like football or anything like that, and you're arguing about fucking trades and all this, people love doing it. But at the end of the day, it's just armchair shit, right? It's not really contributing anything. And I think people that's the thing is, but no one thinks that they're playing, or some do. But, no one who is observing and commentating on sports thinks that they're a member of the team and they have that they're in the AFL. Some do, but I'm saying, like, generally. Unfortunately, with politics or the legal process, people think that because they have the right to vote that they're participating, or that they're, somehow arguing on the internet is achieving anything, and it's not. It's like, well, it's all theoretical until you get to court, and then it becomes a precedent, okay? And it's like, well, and also the law doesn't always rule on what's fair or what you feel should happen. It's like it rules on, the best argument. It's not really, anyway, it's all, I find it funny with people arguing theoretical bullshit all day, every day. It's like, it's such a waste of time. Why? Why do you do that? I've never understood that. It's like, maybe because, I don't know. Anyway, I obviously, I'll write and do stuff, right? I mean, I'll write things, but it comes from a place of knowing stuff. And most of my job, I feel, is telling people that what they do doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, so I have a right to make dumb jokes on Taya's stream until you don't, exactly. Until I say, fuck off. No, I gotta go. Anyway, my voice is, I'm fading and my nose is itching and my voice is hurting and my head hurts. And so I'm going to go, and I've got an assignment due. So anyway, I've got to go do that. But the Zoom thing, like, it's about trust at the end of the day. There's nothing really here that is, controversial. And if you read the terms, what's funny is when people read, what's funny is when people read the terms of service and don't realize that it's boilerplate for like 95% of everything that you're using. That makes me laugh. I was like, yeah. Have you read Instagrams? Anyway, have you read YouTube? Read YouTube's terms of service? Anyway, I'm going to go. Take care. I will be back, assuming I have a voice, because when Paul got sick, he had laryngitis for a few days. But assuming I don't lose my voice, I'll be back later in the week. But I just wanted to do this because I try to make sure that I commit to doing it. Anyway, the sunlight too. I hate it. I might do it in the studio next time, over there next time. All right, I love you. Take care. Thanks for chatting and all of this stuff. Okay. Oh, yeah. So actually, Craig said something good as well. Stricter rules around conflicts of interest. Yes. So there's regulatory things that you can do to win back trust. And I do feel the ALP are doing that behind the scenes. They're just obviously, it takes time to do these things. Once you get through the theatre of if the Greens would stop being stupid fuckwits and actually let people run the government and fix things, it would be better. But, that's the democratic process for you. They have the right to block things. That's just how they might be able to get what they want. And I hope that we can, get people better housing and more affordable housing. And I hope I'm fucking one of them, because we're always the ones left out of every fucking thing. Not poor enough and not rich enough. It's like, we always end up getting that fucking burden. But anyway, become a patron if you like. Tell your friends. I have applied at X. I want to, I don't know. I don't know where I fit, but we'll see how we go. Let's see if I go. Paul said, I haven't heard anything, but Paul said, well, you haven't gotten a poop emoji back. So no poop is good news. This is the world we live in now. And someone actually argued that the poop emoji actually can be, this is why the law around this stuff is funny. You actually find the subtext of it is comedy, which is that the poop emoji could actually be considered not engaging in good faith. So you've got to be very careful legally as well. So it's quite funny. Oh, good. You're working from home. You send me a cardboard box. Protect my voice. Yes, I will. I'll go have tea and all that sort of stuff. I'm good at looking after my voice. So I'm going to go and sing. I fucking started singing Amanaso Dio Dio Dio, best song. And I just realised it was only like a big hit in Australia, which sounds about right, because I went looking it up, and a lot of America, it didn't land so well in America, but here it was like a massive hit. And so that was funny. And yeah. Oh, Paul's funny, man. He's fucking, oh yeah, he had some whiskey last night, and he's decided that we should start a podcast. Because he's basically, you've met him, Rebecca, where he's basically Ron Swanson, and basically, but he's also Ron Swanson when Ron gets drunk with the, that. So he has a few whiskeys and he's like, we need to do a podcast. And I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. He's like, he's feeling a bit, I saw him drive in, he's feeling a bit seedy, I think, and I think he's come home. So I'm just going to go see what he's doing. But we're thinking of doing, I think we can do a couples podcast now, because we've obviously been married long enough where it's like we could just talk about whatever. And he's like, had whiskey, he's like, I'm going to tell everyone how gross you are. It's like, oh, okay, it's funny. But yeah, so anyway. So I love you. Take care. I shall be back later in the week. Stay well. And yes, I love you. Tell your friends, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And also tell me what you want me to stream about. I always end up just not streaming about the thing anyway. But yeah. Zoom's fine. It's never been that great. They're all pretty much the same unless you go into this sort of super paranoid open, because the thing is you trade one thing for another, which is convenience. Okay. Is everyone using Zoom? Then you then use it because it's going to fuck you up. Do you want to use technically peer-to-peer open source video conferencing? Then you can do that. However, most people are not, the barrier, the friction's there, right? So, or Google Meet or Slack or whatever. The Slack is quite expensive, right? I'd actually say go to like WhatsApp or Telegram if you're going to use it. I'd actually, if you're concerned with privacy, use Telegram or WhatsApp. But anyway, I'm going to go. I love you. Take care. I'll see you soon. Thank you for your precious life seconds, all of that stuff. Bye.